Dreams were never meant to be comforting. That was Freud's position from the beginning. He did not believe dreams existed to soothe the mind, to entertain it, or to provide meaning in a poetic sense. He believed dreams existed because something was not allowed to appear during waking life. Something had been pushed aside, silenced, or judged unacceptable. And sleep created a narrow opening where that thing could still speak. In Freud's view, the mind is not transparent to itself. It hides from its own contents. It edits, filters, and distorts internal material long before you are aware of it. What you experience as thought is already processed, already shaped to fit what the conscious mind can tolerate. Dreams, then, are not messages sent deliberately. They are compromises. Half-allowed expressions that slip through when control weakens. The idea itself is unsettling. It suggests that consciousness is not the ruler of the mind, but a gatekeeper. And like all gatekeepers, it does not decide what exists. It only decides what is permitted to pass. Freud believed that when you fall asleep, that gate loosens. Not completely. The mind does not suddenly become honest. Instead, it becomes negotiable. The same forces that suppress thoughts during the day are still present at night, but they are less precise, less vigilant. This creates space for disguised material to emerge. That disguise is essential. According to Freud, if forbidden thoughts appeared directly, sleep would be impossible. The mind would react with anxiety and wake itself up. So the dream must alter its content. It must bend it. Replace threatening ideas with symbols. Shift emotions onto safer images. Break a single idea into fragments and scatter them across unrelated scenes. What you remember in the morning is not the thought itself. It is the result of censorship. From this perspective, forgetting dreams is not accidental. Freud argued that forgetting is another layer of defense. The mind resists recalling material that came too close to what was repressed. What you remember upon waking is already filtered again. Some dreams vanish entirely because they failed to pass inspection twice. This raises a troubling question. If the mind is willing to distort itself even when unconscious, how much of waking thought is already altered before it reaches awareness? Freud's theory suggests that the conscious mind is always late. It never encounters raw material. It receives only what has been approved, reshaped, or disguised. Dreams simply expose this process because the disguise is more visible. Sleep, then, is not a pause in mental life. It is a different configuration of control. The same forces are present, but the balance shifts. The unconscious gains leverage. The censor grows tired. And in that imbalance, something speaks. Not clearly. Not honestly. But persistently. This is where Freud believed dreams derive their power. Not because they reveal truth directly, but because they demonstrate that truth is always being managed. The mind does not aim for accuracy. It aims for stability. Dreams are what stability looks like when repression weakens. Freud believed that the unconscious does not think the way consciousness does. It does not argue. It does not reason step by step. It does not correct itself when something feels illogical. Instead, it operates through association. One idea activates another, not because it is sensible, but because it is linked by emotion, memory, or resemblance. This is why dreams feel disjointed. The unconscious is not trying to tell a story. It is trying to release pressure. According to Freud, much of that pressure comes from wishes. Not wishes in the casual sense of desire or hope, but impulses that have been judged unacceptable. Thoughts that conflict with social rules, personal identity, or moral standards. These wishes do not disappear when they are rejected. They remain active, looking for expression. During waking life, these impulses are suppressed. The mind diverts attention away from them. It replaces them with safer thoughts. It distracts itself. This effort requires energy. Sleep reduces that energy. The mind grows less strict. And so the wishes look for indirect routes. Freud argued that every dream, no matter how frightening or unpleasant, is rooted in wish fulfillment. This does not mean the dream feels pleasurable. It means that something wanted expression, and the dream provided a compromised version of it. Even anxiety dreams, he believed, represent wishes that have been distorted beyond recognition. This idea was controversial then, and it remains uncomfortable now. It suggests that distressing dreams are not warnings or punishments, but negotiations. The mind allows a partial release while disguising its origin. To do this, the unconscious relies on mechanisms. Freud identified several processes that shape dreams. One of them is condensation. Multiple ideas are compressed into a single image. One person in a dream may represent several people at once. One object may carry layered meaning. This compression makes interpretation difficult, but it also makes concealment efficient. Another mechanism is displacement. Emotional weight is shifted from an important idea onto something trivial. A powerful feeling may attach itself to a harmless detail. The real source remains hidden, while the emotion still finds expression. This is why dreams often feel intense without an obvious cause. Freud believed these mechanisms were not exclusive to dreams. They operate during waking life as well. Slips of the tongue, sudden emotional reactions, and seemingly irrational preferences follow similar patterns. Dreams simply exaggerate the process. What this implies is unsettling. The mind is not divided cleanly into conscious and unconscious parts. They overlap, influence each other, and compete. Conscious thought is not in charge. It is negotiating with forces that do not speak its language. Freud described the unconscious as timeless. Ideas stored there do not age. They do not weaken simply because years pass. A thought rejected in childhood can return decades later with the same intensity. Sleep does not create this persistence. It reveals it. This helps explain why some dreams feel outdated. Why familiar childhood environments reappear without warning. Why emotions resurface without context. The unconscious does not update itself. It accumulates. Freud believed that anxiety plays a crucial role in this system. Anxiety is the signal that repression is under strain. When a wish comes too close to awareness, anxiety rises. This anxiety forces further distortion. The dream becomes stranger, less coherent, more symbolic. Confusion becomes a defense. In this way, anxiety is not an enemy of repression. It is its partner. Anxiety keeps forbidden material from appearing too clearly. But it also ensures that the pressure remains. The result is a cycle. Suppression creates tension. Sleep loosens control. Dreams release tension in disguised form. Anxiety shapes that disguise. And waking life resumes with repression intact. Nothing is resolved. Nothing is finished. Freud did not see this as a malfunction. He saw it as the normal condition of mental life. The mind is not built to reveal everything it contains. It is built to survive itself. Dreams are not messages sent for your benefit. They are byproducts of internal conflict. Evidence that something is being held back. And the fact that this process continues night after night suggests something more disturbing. The mind does not aim to eliminate conflict. It aims to manage it. Freud believed that repression is not a single act. It is a continuous process. The mind does not decide once what is unacceptable and then move on. It monitors itself constantly, adjusting what is allowed to appear and what must remain hidden. This monitoring becomes so habitual that it feels invisible. Most people are unaware it is happening at all. Dreams, in Freud's view, briefly disrupt this system. But they do not dismantle it. The same internal authority that restricts thought during the day remains active at night. It simply becomes less precise. Less disciplined. This is why dreams are distorted rather than direct. The censor is tired, not absent. Freud argued that this internal authority develops early. Long before logic or self-reflection, the mind begins learning which impulses lead to discomfort, rejection, or punishment. Those impulses are not destroyed. They are redirected. Pushed out of awareness. Over time, this redirection becomes automatic. What begins as an external rule becomes an internal one. This is where Freud's theory becomes especially uncomfortable. He believed that much of what you experience as personal morality is the result of internalized control. The mind adopts restrictions and enforces them from within. By adulthood, the source of those restrictions is often forgotten. Only their effects remain. Dreams expose this internal structure. They show that certain thoughts require disguise. That some wishes cannot appear openly, even to oneself. The symbols in dreams are not chosen at random. They are selected because they are safer than the idea they replace. Freud believed that symbols are effective because they allow distance. Distance reduces threat. A symbol can carry emotional charge without triggering immediate resistance. This is why dreams often rely on indirect imagery rather than explicit representation. The more unacceptable the thought, the further removed the symbol must be. This creates a paradox. The most intense dreams often correspond to the most deeply repressed material. But the clearer the emotional intensity, the more distorted the imagery becomes. Meaning is preserved. Form is sacrificed. Freud argued that interpretation is difficult not because dreams are vague, but because they are deliberately misleading. They are designed to pass inspection. They are compromises between expression and concealment. This design extends beyond dreams. Freud believed waking thought uses similar strategies. Rationalization, denial, and projection are not failures of thinking. They are defensive maneuvers. The mind protects itself by reshaping reality rather than confronting internal conflict directly. Dreams simply reveal this tendency in exaggerated form. Another disturbing implication follows. If the mind is willing to deceive itself to preserve stability, then sincerity is not guaranteed. Even introspection becomes suspect. The act of looking inward does not ensure honesty. It may simply activate new forms of disguise. Freud believed this was why self-knowledge is difficult. Not because the mind lacks information, but because it resists accessing it. Insight threatens equilibrium. The mind prefers coherence over truth. This resistance does not feel like resistance. It feels like certainty. When a thought is unacceptable, the mind does not label it as forbidden. It removes it before labeling occurs. What remains feels complete. Logical. Final. The absence is unnoticed. Dreams hint at what is missing. Freud described dreams as the royal road to the unconscious not because they reveal everything, but because they reveal that something is being hidden. They provide indirect evidence of repression. Not answers, but pressure points. This is why dreams can feel invasive. They bypass the usual defenses. They bring unfamiliar emotions into familiar settings. They disturb without explanation. They create discomfort without clear cause. And yet, most people dismiss them. Freud did not. He believed that ignoring dreams was another form of defense. Paying attention risks uncovering material that consciousness has worked hard to exclude. The mind does not forget without reason. If a thought returns repeatedly in disguised form, Freud believed it was because it had not been resolved. Resolution would eliminate pressure. Disguise allows persistence. This suggests that repetition in dreams is not coincidence. It is insistence. The unconscious does not argue for attention. It applies pressure until something shifts. Whether that shift ever occurs is uncertain. Freud believed that when the mind fails to resolve internal conflict, it adapts by reorganizing itself around that conflict. What cannot be expressed is not simply hidden. It becomes structural. It shapes behavior, perception, and emotional response without announcing its presence. Over time, the original source of tension fades from awareness, but its influence remains active. This is why Freud did not view symptoms as accidents. Anxiety, compulsions, and intrusive thoughts were not errors in the system. They were the system's solution. They represented attempts to manage pressure without allowing its cause into consciousness. In this sense, the mind does not malfunction. It compensates. Dreams fit into this compensatory process. They allow partial discharge. But partial discharge is not resolution. It relieves tension without addressing its origin. This is why the same themes return night after night. The mind releases just enough pressure to continue functioning, then rebuilds the barrier. Freud believed that anxiety emerges when this balance is threatened. When a forbidden idea moves too close to awareness, anxiety rises as a warning signal. The purpose of this signal is not to inform you of danger in the external world, but to prevent internal exposure. Anxiety protects repression. This reframes anxiety entirely. It is not simply fear without an object. It is the emotional response to internal proximity. Something unacceptable is nearing consciousness, and the mind reacts by creating discomfort. Dreams often carry anxiety because they approach these boundaries. They circle around forbidden material without crossing fully into clarity. The closer they come, the more distorted they become. Symbolism intensifies. Narrative breaks down. The mind prioritizes concealment over coherence. This cycle repeats. The disturbing implication is that rest is conditional. Sleep is permitted only as long as repression holds. Dreams test that boundary. When the test goes too far, consciousness reasserts control. Freud also believed that the unconscious does not distinguish between imagination and reality. It responds to thoughts as if they were events. This is why imagined scenarios can produce real emotional reactions. The unconscious reacts to meaning, not fact. In dreams, this lack of distinction becomes visible. Impossible situations provoke genuine fear or desire. The emotional response is real because, for the unconscious, the situation is real enough. This helps explain why dreams can feel more intense than waking life. They bypass rational correction. There is no internal voice reminding you that something is fictional. The censor is busy managing content, not verifying accuracy. Freud believed this vulnerability reveals how fragile conscious control actually is. Rationality depends on constant reinforcement. Remove that reinforcement, and the mind reverts to older operating principles. These principles are not concerned with truth. They are concerned with tension. The unconscious seeks release. Consciousness seeks stability. Dreams exist at the intersection of these goals. They are not failures. They are negotiations. Freud argued that even when dreams appear meaningless, they are structured. The structure simply follows a different logic. A logic based on association, substitution, and emotional economy rather than reason. This logic persists outside of sleep. It influences creativity, memory, and decision-making. But during waking life, it is overshadowed by rational thought. Sleep removes that dominance. What emerges is not chaos. It is a different order. Freud believed that people resist this idea because it undermines autonomy. If thoughts arise from hidden processes, then conscious intention is not the sole driver of behavior. Choice. Freud believed that the most unsettling aspect of dreams is not their content, but their persistence. They return even when ignored. They repeat themes even when dismissed. They adapt when resisted. This persistence suggests intention, but not conscious intention. It is pressure behaving intelligently. The unconscious does not demand recognition directly. It applies force indirectly. If one form of expression fails, it shifts to another. A dream becomes a symptom. A symptom becomes a habit. A habit becomes a personality trait. The original conflict disappears from view, but its influence spreads. This is why Freud believed that understanding dreams required patience rather than insight. There is no single moment of revelation. Interpretation unfolds slowly, through patterns. One dream reveals little. Many dreams reveal structure. Freud argued that repetition is never accidental. When the mind repeats imagery, scenarios, or emotions, it is conserving effort. It has learned that this configuration releases tension efficiently. Change would require renegotiation. Negotiation risks exposure. So the system stays where it is. This creates the illusion of inevitability. People say they always dream a certain way. They describe recurring themes as if they were natural features of the mind. Freud believed they were learned solutions. Adaptive at one time. Persistent long after. This persistence extends into waking life. Repeated reactions become automatic. Automatic reactions feel natural. Natural reactions feel like identity. The mind does not announce when a coping strategy has become a constraint. Freud believed this was one reason people resist psychological explanation. To accept it would mean admitting that some behaviors are not chosen. That preferences may be defensive. That personality may be partially constructed around avoidance. Dreams quietly expose this. They show the same emotional logic operating without conscious editing. They reveal which themes refuse to disappear. Another disturbing implication follows. If the unconscious shapes behavior indirectly, then attempts at direct control may fail. Telling yourself to stop thinking something does not remove its source. It often increases pressure. The thought returns disguised, intensified, or displaced. Freud believed this was why suppression often backfires. The mind does not eliminate content by force. It redirects it. The stronger the suppression, the more distorted the return. Dreams demonstrate this principle nightly. What is denied during the day finds expression at night. What is ignored returns symbolically. What is feared appears indirectly. This does not mean the unconscious is hostile. Freud did not view it as an enemy. He viewed it as indifferent to comfort. It seeks equilibrium, not happiness. It releases tension where it can. The discomfort comes from conflict, not malice. Freud believed that modern life intensifies this conflict. Social rules multiply. Expectations increase. Internal censorship becomes more complex. The unconscious does not adapt at the same pace. Older impulses persist under newer constraints. Dreams become more distorted as a result. Symbolism grows denser. Meaning fragments. Emotional intensity rises. This is not pathology. It is pressure. Freud believed that ignoring this process does not neutralize it. It simply forces it into less visible forms. Anxiety, fatigue, irritability, and dissatisfaction often emerge where direct expression is blocked. Dreams are one of the few places where the system still speaks in its own language. They are not messages sent to help you. They are signals that something is being managed. What makes this unsettling is not that dreams contain hidden meaning, but that the mind requires concealment to function. That it operates through omission and distortion as a matter of course. Freud's theory suggests that clarity is not the natural state of the mind. Stability is. And stability, once achieved, is defended. The unconscious does not seek resolution. It seeks balance. If balance can be maintained through repetition, distortion, and disguise, there is no incentive to change. Dreams continue. The pressure remains. And the system adapts around it. Freud believed that this defensive stability explains why insight alone rarely changes behavior. Understanding a dream does not dissolve it. Naming a conflict does not remove it. The system does not reorganize because it has been observed. It reorganizes only when the existing balance becomes more costly than alteration. Until then, the unconscious preserves what works. This is why Freud rejected the idea that people simply act against their own interests out of ignorance. He believed most behavior is optimized, just not for conscious goals. It is optimized for internal tension management. Relief, not truth, determines structure. From this perspective, anxiety is not a malfunction. It is a signal that the system is operating near capacity. Pressure is being held, redirected, or compressed, but not resolved. Anxiety appears when redirection begins to fail. Dreams often intensify during these periods. Not because the mind is breaking down, but because it is compensating. Symbolism increases when direct expression becomes too dangerous. Emotional charge spikes when suppression costs rise. Freud believed that anxiety dreams reveal where the system is struggling to maintain balance. They mark fault lines. Not traumas necessarily, but limits. The unconscious does not tolerate uncertainty well. When external reality becomes unpredictable, internal patterns become more rigid. Repetition increases. Familiar imagery returns. Old themes resurface. This is not nostalgia. It is stabilization. Freud described this as regression, not as a collapse, but as a retreat to earlier solutions that once worked. The mind reuses structures that previously reduced tension. Even if they are outdated. Even if they distort perception. This explains why people under stress often dream of childhood environments, past relationships, or old fears. The system is not revisiting the past for meaning. It is retrieving tested configurations. Safety, to the unconscious, is familiarity. This connects to one of Freud's most unsettling claims, that repetition itself becomes comforting, even when the content is unpleasant. The mind prefers a known threat to an unknown one. Predictable discomfort is easier to manage than undefined risk. This is why recurring nightmares persist. They are not failures to resolve fear. They are controlled exposures. The system rehearses danger in a form it can anticipate. Freud believed this was also why people unconsciously recreate similar conflicts in waking life. Relationships repeat. Emotional patterns recur. Outcomes change slightly, but the structure remains. The system is not seeking pleasure. It is seeking predictability. This reframes the idea of personal growth in an uncomfortable way. Change is not resisted because it is difficult. It is resisted because it destabilizes equilibrium. Even improvement introduces uncertainty. Dreams reveal this resistance clearly. When a person begins to confront something avoided, dreams often become more chaotic. Symbols fragment. Narratives break down. Emotional tone shifts abruptly. Freud saw this not as regression, but as reorganization. Old defenses loosen before new ones form. The system enters a temporary state of imbalance. This is why Freud believed analysis was inherently uncomfortable. Not because it exposes secrets, but because it disrupts established compromises. The mind loses its familiar shortcuts. Dreams become louder when their function is threatened. Another disturbing implication follows. If the unconscious prioritizes balance over truth, then some beliefs may exist solely because they stabilize the system. They are not conclusions. They are supports. Dreams sometimes expose this by contradicting conscious values. A person who sees themselves as rational dreams irrationally. A person who avoids aggression dreams violently. A person who values control dreams helplessness. Freud believed these contradictions were not hypocrisies. They were compensations. The system distributes traits across different domains to prevent overload. What is not allowed in daylight appears at night. This does not mean dreams are confessions. They are pressure maps. They show where forces are being redistributed. Freud warned against interpreting dreams too literally. Symbols do not translate cleanly. Meaning emerges through recurrence, not decoding. A single image means little. A pattern means structure. And structure reveals function. The most unsettling conclusion Freud reached was this: much of what feels personal is procedural. Reactions feel intimate because they are internal, but they operate according to rules learned long ago. The mind is not constantly deciding. It is executing. Dreams are one of the few moments where this execution becomes visible. Not because they explain you, but because they reveal how little explanation the system requires to continue. Freud believed that the most revealing aspect of dreams is not what appears in them, but what never does. Entire experiences can vanish. Faces blur. Names dissolve. Critical moments are skipped. The mind edits itself while you watch. This absence is not random. What disappears is not forgotten. It is excluded. The system removes elements that would destabilize the dream's function. Meaning is trimmed to preserve balance. Freud argued that forgetting inside dreams mirrors forgetting in waking life. Memory is not a storage problem. It is an access problem. The brain decides what is permitted to surface based on what the system can tolerate. This is why emotionally neutral events are remembered easily, while charged moments fracture. The more significant something is, the more carefully it is managed. Dreams perform this management openly. They allow fragments through, but never the whole. Freud believed that when people say they do not remember their dreams, it is often because remembering would alter waking equilibrium. The dream did its job. Bringing it into consciousness would undo the compromise. So the system seals it. This sealing process does not require intent. No decision is made. It is automatic. Protective forgetting feels passive because it is efficient. Freud believed that the most revealing aspect of dreams is not what appears in them, but what never does. Entire experiences can vanish. Faces blur. Names dissolve. Critical moments are skipped. The mind edits itself while you watch. This absence is not random. What disappears is not forgotten. It is excluded. The system removes elements that would destabilize the dream's function. Meaning is trimmed to preserve balance. Freud argued that forgetting inside dreams mirrors forgetting in waking life. Memory is not a storage problem. It is an access problem. The brain decides what is permitted to surface based on what the system can tolerate. This is why emotionally neutral events are remembered easily, while charged moments fracture. The more significant something is, the more carefully it is managed. Dreams perform this management openly. They allow fragments through, but never the whole. Freud believed that when people say they do not remember their dreams, it is often because remembering would alter waking equilibrium. The dream did its job. Bringing it into consciousness would undo the compromise. So the system seals it. This sealing process does not require intent. No decision is made. It is automatic. Protective forgetting feels passive because it is efficient. The unconscious does not argue. It filters. This filtering explains why insight can feel unsettling without being informative. You can sense that something matters without knowing what it is. Anxiety rises without a clear source. The system alerts without revealing. Freud believed this state, knowing without knowing, is not confusion. It is containment. The mind keeps certain pressures diffused rather than localized. A clear cause would demand action. Diffuse unease allows maintenance. Dreams contribute to this diffusion. They redistribute emotional charge across symbols, narratives, and sensations. Fear becomes a setting. Desire becomes motion. Guilt becomes distortion. Nothing lands directly. This is also why dreams often end abruptly. The system cuts off the sequence once the necessary discharge has occurred. Resolution is not required. Relief is. Freud saw the same mechanism operating in slips of the tongue, sudden thoughts, and intrusive images. These are not mistakes. They are microdreams intruding into waking consciousness. The boundary is thinner than it feels. At night, the system loosens control. During the day, it allows brief leaks. The same rules apply. What emerges is shaped, incomplete, and strategically misdirected. Freud believed this misdirection is essential. If the mind confronted its conflicts directly, the resulting tension could overwhelm function. Indirection preserves continuity. You keep working. You keep speaking. You keep moving forward. But the cost is fragmentation. Parts of experience are split across domains. Some are handled symbolically. Some are acted out behaviorally. Some remain suspended as anxiety. Dreams are where these fragments attempt temporary integration. Not unity. Temporary alignment. Freud rejected the idea of a fully coherent self. He believed coherence is an illusion produced by successful compartmentalization. The sense of continuity exists because conflicts are distributed, not resolved. Dreams threaten this illusion by revealing multiplicity. Different desires speak. Different fears move independently. Logic dissolves because logic is not required for balance. This is why dreams feel alien. Not because they are foreign, but because they operate without the narrative glue that consciousness relies on. Freud believed that when people describe a dream as not like me, they are revealing how narrow their waking identity is. The system contains more than the story allows. Dreams do not invent these elements. They reveal their autonomy. The unsettling implication is that much of what you experience as choice is post hoc explanation. The system acts. Consciousness interprets. Dreams remove the interpreter. What remains is raw function. And that function is not moral. It is not logical. It is not even adaptive in a long-term sense. It is stabilizing. Freud believed this was why complete self-knowledge is impossible. Understanding everything would eliminate the mechanisms that make understanding survivable. The system depends on partial blindness. Dreams are tolerated only because they are temporary. Freud believed that the final disturbance caused by dreams is not their meaning, but their implication. If the unconscious operates continuously, then consciousness is not in charge. It is a surface process. A negotiator, not a commander. Dreams expose this hierarchy without commentary. They show action without permission. Desire without approval. Fear without justification. The unsettling part is not what dreams say. It is what they ignore. Logic is unnecessary. Time collapses. Identity shifts. The mind functions perfectly without the structures you rely on during the day. Nothing breaks. Nothing stops. This suggests that waking consciousness is not the foundation of the self. It is an overlay. A regulatory layer that constrains rather than generates experience. Freud believed that consciousness evolved not to understand reality, but to manage conflict. It simplifies. It labels. It creates linear stories so the system can move forward without stalling. Dreams remove this simplification. What emerges is not chaos. It is a different order. Freud argued that anxiety appears when this order threatens to surface during waking life. Anxiety is not fear of something external. It is fear of internal material approaching awareness without sufficient distortion. This is why anxiety often feels vague. The system detects proximity, not content. Something is nearing the threshold. Consciousness prepares defenses. Avoidance increases. Distraction intensifies. Repetition feels soothing. The mind treats familiarity as safety, even when the familiar is distressing. Dreams sometimes bypass this safety mechanism. They present material before the defenses are fully active. When this happens, people wake abruptly. Heart racing. Image lingering. Meaning unclear. Freud believed that the final disturbance caused by dreams is not their meaning, but their implication. If the unconscious operates continuously, then consciousness is not in charge. It is a surface process. A negotiator, not a commander. Dreams expose this hierarchy without commentary. They show action without permission. Desire without approval. Fear without justification. The unsettling part is not what dreams say. It is what they ignore. Logic is unnecessary. Time collapses. Identity shifts. The mind functions perfectly without the structures you rely on during the day. Nothing breaks. Nothing stops. This suggests that waking consciousness is not the foundation of the self. It is an overlay. A regulatory layer that constrains rather than generates experience. Freud believed that consciousness evolved not to understand reality, but to manage conflict. It simplifies. It labels. It creates linear stories so the system can move forward without stalling. Dreams remove this simplification. What emerges is not chaos. It is a different order. Freud argued that anxiety appears when this order threatens to surface during waking life. Anxiety is not fear of something external. It is fear of internal material approaching awareness without sufficient distortion. This is why anxiety often feels vague. The system detects proximity, not content. Something is nearing the threshold. Consciousness prepares defenses. The unconscious does not respond to explanations. It responds to balance. This challenges the idea of personal control. It suggests that change requires structural alteration, not willpower. Habits persist because they stabilize. Symptoms persist because they work. Dreams reveal what works. Not what feels good. Not what makes sense. What reduces internal strain. Freud believed that modern discomfort often comes from attempting to optimize happiness rather than stability. The system resists this goal. It has no metric for fulfillment. Only tension reduction. Dreams remind us of this priority. They replay unresolved dynamics not because the mind is broken, but because the system is efficient. The most uncomfortable realization Freud offered is this: the self you experience is not the source of your actions. It is the result of negotiations you are not invited to observe. Dreams occasionally lift the curtain. Not to inform you, but to keep the system running. When you wake, the curtain falls. Memory fragments. Meaning fades. The illusion of continuity resumes. And the process continues. Every night. Freud believed that the most persistent misunderstanding about the mind is the belief that awareness equals control. Consciousness feels active, deliberate, intentional. But dreams demonstrate how little intention is required for complex mental activity to occur. While you sleep, the mind organizes emotion, redistributes tension, rehearses conflict, and edits memory without instruction. There is no central authority issuing commands. The system functions because it does not wait for permission. This raises an uncomfortable question: if the mind can do all of this without you, what exactly is the role of the you that wakes up in the morning? Freud argued that the sense of agency is retrospective. The mind acts first. Consciousness explains afterward. Dreams make this visible by removing the explanation layer entirely. Action remains. Meaning does not. This is why dreams feel intrusive rather than chosen. You do not decide what appears. You encounter it already formed. The experience happens to you. Freud believed waking life operates the same way, only slower and better disguised. Thoughts arrive before you decide to think them. Emotional reactions precede rational evaluation. Preferences emerge before reasons are constructed. Consciousness claims authorship after the fact. Dreams expose this sequence. This exposure is not meant to enlighten. It is tolerated because it occurs while the regulatory systems are relaxed. During the day, the same process would feel destabilizing. This is why excessive self-observation can increase anxiety. Watching the system too closely interferes with its ability to operate smoothly. The illusion of effortlessness depends on partial ignorance. Freud believed modern anxiety often results from excessive inward focus. Not introspection in depth, but surface-level monitoring. The constant checking of mood, motivation, and identity disrupts automatic regulation. Dreams are immune to this monitoring. They occur beyond scrutiny. That is why they remain effective. But they leave residue. Fragments leak into waking life as unease, repetition, fixation, or unexplained aversion. The system rarely presents a clear message. Clarity would demand response. Diffusion allows continuation. This is why people often feel restless without knowing why. The system is active. Consciousness is uninformed. Freud believed that much of human behavior is driven by pressures that never become thoughts. They remain forces rather than ideas. Dreams are one of the few places where these forces take form, even briefly. Not to communicate. To discharge. This reframes the purpose of dreaming entirely. Dreams are not stories. They are processes. Narrative is incidental. What matters is movement, substitution, displacement. Emotion shifts location. Desire changes shape. Conflict relocates into symbol. Once the redistribution is complete, the dream dissolves. Freud believed that when people search for hidden messages in dreams, they often miss the more disturbing implication: the mind does not need to be understood to function. It only needs to maintain equilibrium. Meaning is optional. Stability is not. This creates a paradox. The more you try to fully understand yourself, the more you risk interfering with the systems that keep you operational. Insight can destabilize if it arrives without structural change. Dreams know this. They reveal enough to regulate, but not enough to dismantle. This is why recurring dreams persist even after interpretation. The system continues to use what works. Insight does not replace utility. Freud believed that the unconscious is conservative. It prefers familiar tension to unpredictable resolution. Known discomfort is safer than unknown relief. This is why repetition feels inevitable. Patterns repeat because they succeed at maintaining balance, not because they are unresolved. Dreams reflect this preference. They recycle scenarios. They reuse symbols. They replay dynamics with slight variation. Not to solve them. To keep them contained. The unsettling conclusion is this: much of what you experience as personality is simply the byproduct of repeated regulation strategies. Traits are habits that stabilized. Preferences are compromises that held. Dreams show the raw material beneath these traits. They expose how flexible identity becomes when regulation loosens. You are not as fixed as you feel. You are not as unified as you appear. And you are not as aware as you assume. Freud believed that the mind's greatest achievement is not self-knowledge, but self-maintenance. Everything else is secondary. Dreams are evidence of this priority. They do not care if you understand them. They only care that you wake up able to continue. And tonight, when consciousness fades again, the system will resume its work. Without asking. Without explaining. Without you.